How's it going, fuckers? Sorry. I told myself not to swear so much. But I wanted to get a video in before the Penguins Capitals game. Go Pens, fuck the Capitals. And all Washington sports teams, by the way. But that's another video for another day. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the midterms and then wanted to touch on a few things regarding the Democrats and their less than, suboptimal leadership. We'll leave it at that for now. So the big story, in my estimation, is the Democrats taking over the House and breaking the Republican monopoly on power. So that was a big win. Credit to the Democrats. They did what they had to do. A lot of it was because a lot of people hate Trump, but who cares? They had also a number of very good candidates. So credit where credit's due. They worked out well, and they're still gaining seats as we speak. In addition, there were a lot of wins statewide, and this was a problem for Democrats for a long time. They were not getting the job done at the local level, at the state level, and that's what led to a lot of this gerrymandering in part. So the fact that, they were able to flip multiple state houses, multiple governorships, was massive, including taking out Scott Walker, who is the ultimate nemesis of the working man or woman. This guy is just a monster of epic proportions. Union buster, hates work the right. Let's be honest. This guy just hates anybody who makes less than $100,000. That's just what it is. And I'd be maybe generous with that number. So he was taken out in Kansas, deep ruby red Kansas. What's the matter with Kansas? Thomas Frank fame. Vote suppressor in chief Chris Kobach, who was, if you remember that stupid ass committee Trump set up a while back, he basically had a voter fraud committee to find out where all the illegal, ineligible voters were. Total made-ups, horseshit conspiracy theories. And he had Chris Kobach in charge, and Chris Kobach has been a pioneer when it comes to voter suppression strategies. And he could not get the job even in Kansas as a state senator, I believe. Laura Kelly took him out comfortably, which really goes to show. I mean, that's a state that's been, crushed by supply-side conservative right-wing policies for years under Sam Brownback, and it's gotten to the point where even moderate Republicans are backing the Democrats because they're just we have no money for education, we have no money for basic necessities because of this insane constant cutting of benefits for the poor, while at the same time giving basically creating a state of socialism essentially for the rich. So there were numerous other victories. On the downside, the Democrats got worked over good in the Senate, lost 3 seats as of now. Some really good potential governors races did not, at the moment, come out positively. You have Stacey Abrams in Georgia, Ben Jealous here in Maryland, who has actually lost, Andrew Gillum in Florida, and they're trailing. It's not over, especially in Georgia to some extent. What's going on in Florida is a little uncertain. What else is new? But they're not looking great right now, and that's a product of basically cheating, voter suppression, cheating, and changing votes. I said before the election, this sort of stuff, once finalized, if it doesn't come out the right way, people should be in the streets. They should shut just shut everything down. and that should be the end of that. Trump can make bullshit lies on one side about, invisible people, phantom voting. We sure as hell can, stand up for real, live voter suppression. So it's a real shame, and hopefully some things take a turn for the better there. We'll see what happens. But when you have a Klansman in Ron DeSantis, basically a Klansman in a suit. The guy is a white nationalist. The guy is, you might as well put over a hood over his head. This guy is human trash. I wish nothing but the worst for him. Obviously, you never want to say anything bad about a state, and I try not to say bad things about people, but I really have no regard for this man, and I hope for the worst for him. And Brian Kemp, who is the Secretary of State running the election that he is actually running in. So it's a little bit of conflict of interest there. But that's what we got there. And there's another guy who is a reactionary right-wing type of guy. He doesn't like really anybody that's not a white person. He hates women. He hates minorities. He is just has a lot of hate in his heart. He wants to kill illegal immigrants. Kill might be a little strong there, but this is the nature of people we're dealing with. I think maybe sometimes we don't realize it, but it's really true, actually. This is just a bad motherfucker. We saw Ted Cruz eke out a victory. That's a really mixed story. Obviously, it sucks that, the most disgusting person in the country, at least in the Senate, continues to serve. But it was Texas, and it's really hard for Democrats. I mean, they haven't won statewide there in decades. So the fact that Beto got within a few points is pretty fucking impressive, and hopefully a harbinger of things to come. And hopefully now the Democrats have a blueprint, they can do something there. On the flip side, there were some good ballot initiatives. In particular, Amendment 4 in Florida, talking about basically eliminating the disenfranchisement of former felons. Would bring back the right to vote to 1.4 million people, and that is essential. I would go a step further. I think people in prison should be allowed to vote too. I think anybody. I believe in universal enfranchisement for all citizens. Mitch McConnell, turtle man, shit fuck himself. The majority leader of the Senate said something that I vehemently disagree with. That voting is a privilege. You think voting is a privilege? Get the fuck out of this country. Next time I see Mitch McConnell, I'm going to punch him in his stomach. Because, no, again, I don't believe in violence. But I'm going to let him know, verbally. Of course, I'm not in fucking Kentucky or in D.C., so I'm never going to see that motherfucker. But the notion that voting is a privilege is a disgusting, anti-American, hate-filled comment. And it's a comment that has no place if you won't believe the ideals of this country should be right and correct. Voting is a right. So sorry, where I'm at. So anyways, that's where that is. In closing, I mean, Trump, of course, claims this as a victory because he claims everything is a victory because he knows how to play the camera, and his hordes of brainless minions will probably believe him anyways. And I don't like the voter shame, but I'm getting to a point where I have no choice. I mean, you look at this 5-year-old little bitch boy, Ron DeSantis in Florida. If you vote for him, I got no respect for you, truthfully. I understand the circumstances of a lot of people that they're struggling, and Trump speaks to them. I get the logic, but at some point, and I get that for some of those people, there is an economic angle, but at some point, you got to draw a line, and we're getting I mean, at some point, you just got to say there's just a lot of white supremacy out there. But we fight on, we see what happens, and one election is not the end of the world, for good or the bad. Elections are only part of the answer. There's so many other things that can be done, and the work to educate people and make people to help people understand is something that is constantly having to be thought about. In particular, I mean, I was thinking I was able to go after work to go work at a polling place for a couple hours, and I ran into there was a guy there furious about people voting, and I kind of got where he was coming from, because he was saying, you guys are all voting in line thinking you're making the world better, and you're right next to a homeless guy struggling, and no one's going to help him. And I understood what he was getting at, because we have lost a sense of community. I mean, there's something I didn't agree with what he was saying 100%, but he made a lot of valid points. I mean, and it's points that I've discussed with people, I've thought about. Voting is not the only way this can be done. It's something I feel that we got to do because it's what's there, But he made a point of, what's the point of voting? Because, the system is corrupt, so you're just helping a corrupt system. And this is a very common argument that's made around the world. And I personally don't see that right now, because, look, I can go step out and not do, and then get Republicans. And yeah, they're all both on the same team, the capitalist team, but I guess, there's the issue of harm reduction, and there is value to that. But I don't want to, I've talked about that before, I don't want to get too much more to that, but he did make a lot of very salient points, and, there's a lot of truth there. I mean, this is not the end-all, be-all. I mean, there are issues of capitalism, of white supremacy, that we need to have a reckoning with regards, and voting is not going to solve those, but organizing and informing and educating will. So that was just something I still need some time to let a lot of these thoughts marinate. I will say Democrats got to figure something out with regards to the rural problem, and I don't know if there's a good answer, because you can't be losing 80-20 and 70-30 and things like that and expect to blow in most of the counties in a state, and then expecting that you're going to be able to waltz away with an easy victory to take even voter suppression off the table. You got to cut into those margins, and I don't have the answer to that, but I understand when Hillary Clinton was on the ballot. I understand that the Democrats lost sight of these things, and Trump is very skillful, even though he's lying, of speaking to these people. So that really is breaking down that wall is a critical question, along with also primarily getting your base out, getting more and more people out, and heightening turnout. So it really is a tough one. I'm sure we'll have plenty of time to talk about that more in the future. I wanted to just touch on one or two other things. Really contrasting, different messages you saw. I haven't heard all of these speeches in their entirety right now. Mostly I've heard clips, but when you think of Trump coming out and saying, regardless of the results, he's saying, we won. Now, everybody knows bullshit, but he's exciting his base. He's exciting his followers. He's exciting his party. He's very skillful. I mean, people will only listen to the people they support oftentimes, so that's what's happening in this case, and it's obnoxious, it's frustrating, and then he goes and if he fires, I know they say ask for resignation, it's a firing. When you ask someone to resign, you're firing them. So he's firing Jeff Sessions, putting in a real Trump lackey now as acting attorney general, essentially working to stop the Miller investigation before it's too late for them, I guess. So you saw that they went on the attack. You see how some on the left have come out. People like Ocasio-Cortez and Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and Ayanna Pressley and all these very kind of rising left, incoming Congress people. And you see how strong they speak, and they speak in a sense of, bold vision, bold policies, standing up to the right way, and offering hope, a vision, something to get excited about. By contrast, what do you see from, House Leader Nancy Pelosi or especially, Senate Leader Chuck Schumer? Oh, we need to be bipartisan. We need to work. I hope my Republican friends do this. And you just can tell they've been in the game too long. They're totally disconnected. They don't get it. And I understand the logistics of Pelosi getting out of speakership is just as likely she could be replaced by someone to her right than her left. And even her number 2, Steny Hoyer, is a fucking right-wing, conservative, disgusting Democrat. So I understand why some are apprehensive about getting rid of her. It's a tougher situation. Now, there's no excuse in the Senate. Chuck Schumer has been worked over repeatedly by Mitch McConnell. He's gotten rolled on judicial nominations. He's gotten rolled on countless things. He's not even particularly that left on most issues. Obviously socially fine, but on foreign policy, he's in line with the Republicans on things like economic policy. He's, gotten better over the years, but still is largely in bed with Wall Street. So, and he's just a bad tactician. He doesn't know what he's doing up there. I mean, even frickin' Harry Reid I couldn't agree with, and his politics were not really good. But, I mean, he knew what he was doing there. He had a level of competence, and you don't see that with Schumer. Schumer's trying to always. He's acting very naive, and he's letting the Republicans pull the football out like Charlie Brown and Lucy. I mean, this is what it is. It's getting played every single fucking time. And he's just relying on his imaginary, family, the Baileys. This is by true. Look it up. Dude has an imaginary family he uses as his litmus test, or his, compass. So, I mean, the dude's out of his element. He just can't do the job. And the fact that nobody in the Senate caucus, from Joe Manchin to Bernie Sanders, seems interested in challenging him tells you really the sickness that is the United States Senate. And really, that whole institution is completely useless, is bullshit, and really should be just abolished. But short of that, because it's a little bit hard to do, we need people that need to get in there that are not so fucking deliberative. Of course, you don't want people swinging baseball bats at each other in the chamber. I understand that. There has to be a level of civility. I get that. But it's so fucking deliberative to the extreme. Why they call it the most deliberative body in the world. They're just detached. They live in another world. Even Bernie Sanders, whose policies are great, largely great, not perfect, great. When he hears about people yelling at Mitch McConnell and these other scumbags, not violence, just yelling at him, he's like, oh, I don't care much for that. Because when you spend time in that Senate, it's just, you're in a fucking bubble. And it just doesn't work. So, this is the problem with these leaders. I don't have a lot of faith in them. I wish that, some people would, I'd like to see really someone like Barbara Lee in the House who's running for leadership, but I'd like to see her make a run for House because she is, has courage, has positions, has clear positions. She was the only one to vote against the authorization for use of military force right after 9/11 that set them into Afghanistan. And I highly encourage you to listen to her speech on it. It is prophetic. It is prophetic. How she's saying, we should mourn. She's very emotional. Of course, who wouldn't be in that time? But she's just saying, we gotta be clear-minded about this. This will have long-term implications. And it has, because every motherfucking war around the world, they use the AUMF as a fucking legitimate, as kind of their basis of it's okay because of the AUMF. So, that kind of forward-thinking thought, that kind of different point of view. I'd like to see some of these younger members brought up in the leadership, and not fucking Eric fucking Swalwell, who Nancy Pelosi always wants to say, oh, we're helping young mayor. We're looking at young congressmen. Always points to Swalwell. And that's fine. I don't have a particular beef with Swalwell. It's just come on. Put some new voices in there. It should be a diverse set in leadership. You have different points of view. It's good. Talk it out. See where, and then listen to your base. Listen to the people that actually put your ass in office. Something else that the guy I was talking to said, what is the point of a representative? They're supposed to represent the people. They're supposed to represent you or me, not some billionaire that has an office in the Cayman Islands and lives, in the Hamptons. No, they're supposed to be representing the people that put them there. So they've just lost their way. They're not anywhere, connected to the people. And I genuinely fear for the fact that, this kind of ineptitude is going to lead to 4 more years of Donald Trump. It's going to lead to them losing the gains they brought in. There's always, when you fall to a point, they fell so far down, there's always going to be some course correction. Particularly with a fascist-loving, fundamentalist, theocratic, all these factions coming into play, white nationalist Republican Party. I mean, eventually there's going to be some moderation, but we need to go beyond moderation. We need to fix the systematic problems. We don't have a real democracy anymore in this country. We never truly did, I guess, in a sense, but, it wasn't like this, too. So, obviously, every era is different. I don't want to downplay past eras, and Lord knows there were problems. Severe problems from, I could go down a list. We have a very scarred history. But in particular right now, just, these elections can't be considered democratic when you're suppressing the vote and targeting certain communities overtly, when you have the guy who's in charge of operating the election also running in the election. This is basic conflict of interest. No one can fucking do this in their real lives, but they get to do it. That's bogus. This is ridiculous. So, my hope is the Democrats grow a fucking spine. And if they can't do it, then we got to do it for them. We got to push them. And at the same time, understanding that the current system's not going to do the job, and we got to educate and increase our numbers and get ourselves to a point where we can actually fundamentally change the system. I am an absolute believer in democracy, in voting. It goes without saying, in power of the people, but we don't have that anymore. And we want to criticize people in many other countries, and I get it, but we're not doing it here. So, I'm going to call it a night. I was up late last night, so I'm exhausted. And, I'll talk to you in probably a couple days. I got a lot going on the next few days, a lot of meetings, debriefings. I got to go to a wedding, so I'll see you somewhere in there. I'll post again. But until next time. By the way, I meant to say, any thoughts, criticisms, things have just been really hectic of late, so I haven't been able to really cultivate the channel in a way I would like. But any suggestions for someone with not a lot of time or money, I'm always happy to hear them. And yeah, thanks, and I appreciate any. As long as you're not being a dick. If you're gonna be a dick, I'm gonna be a dick right back at you. But if you're giving like good constructive criticism, I'm always happy to hear it, and I'll do the best I can. All right, well, until next time, have a good night, and keep fighting.